right. So far today we have solved for structural imbalances in the economy, environmental disasters and degradation, effectively communicating with other people and connecting with them at their level involving some music. I'm not that ambitious, right, as you can see. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and save the world from jerks in something like 15 to 18 minutes. We're going to work on it in that time frame. And, well, look, I know that some of you came with someone specific in mind, right? So you saw this thing at the end and you were like, yeah, I want to know, why is that person such a jerk, right? So, okay, so now, if it's your spouse, I want to just tell you that you're coming at this in the wrong spirit, okay? So I want to just be, right? But, you know, you can have that person in mind. And imagine the context, because we want to talk a little bit about why are people such jerks? Now, of course, you have to start with a little bit of definitions. And so flipped open the dictionary today, and definition number one, of course, is a sudden or unexpected movement. I'm not here to talk about, not here to talk about saving the world from agile people, right? Whoa, he moves so fast. Definition number two, right, is someone who treats other people badly. That's what we're talking about, right? So why do people treat other people badly? Well, this, of course, is an ancient problem, been around for a long time. But it is a problem that's on my desk because I work for a research group that works on behalf of the world's large organizations, whether they're government agencies or large corporations, nonprofits, or whatever. And people behaving badly is an incredibly complicated, difficult, and expensive, and durable, persistent problem. Right? One of the most expensive and difficult problems that they have. And I work for the kind of research team that looks at a problem like this and says, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we ask, oh, I don't know, about 1 million people, why are people such jerks? Now, we didn't actually ask them, why are people such jerks, right? So we didn't go straight after it and ask it that way. The approach, the methodology was to work with about 150 organizations, to deploy our survey to well over 1 million people at this point. And we're basically asking those people two questions. Have you seen a violation of law or company policy in the last year? And if so, what is it, right? Online survey, it blows out into the Baskin-Robbins of people being jerks. So you got the whole list and you can choose from what was it, right? And the second question, if you answered yes to the first one, is, did you report it to anybody? Did you tell anyone? And if you tell us no, we're going to ask you why you didn't. And if you tell us yes, we're going to get a little information about who you told and why. Now, from that data set, we know a lot, right? It's like X-raying an organization and finding out where is the misconduct within the organization. So neat and tidy, we've got 100 people in this room. It's a nice round number. And so I'll tell you that if you're a typical American group, right, associated with any kind of an organization, we know that 11 of you should have seen some kind of preferential treatment in the last year or conflict of interest that rose to the level of a violation of law or company policy. 8 people or so will have seen harassment, 7 or so will have seen discrimination, and 1 of you will have seen something that you believe to be accounting fraud, okay? Now in China, the issues are a little bit different, right? So in China, we do the X-ray, and what we would find, on average, 100 people in China in the room, is that you've got something like 16 instances of bribery, 15 instances of fraud against the company, as opposed to accounting fraud specifically, a little bit different. How about little Chile down there hanging out the bottom of South America? In Chile, 16 instances of preferential treatment, 13 instances of harassment, and just barely 2 instances in this group of 100 of accounting fraud. The rates, of course, at which people report things and all that kind of stuff vary, and so we're doing this kind of analysis to try and understand, for the world's large organizations, why do people behave like such jerks? But I want to suggest that the way that I've talked about it so far, while true, makes this feel more complicated than it is. Because here's the way it probably felt to you when you first saw the title, right? And I want to submit that it's actually not all that different. So here's the thing. I wore purple socks to school one day in about 3rd grade. And the fact that I remember that is because this happened, right? Okay? I learned that day, purple socks, no, you can't wear them here. I just moved to town. It was new information to me. I interviewed my kids this morning in the car. I can interview them only in the car because in the house they run away. They're like, boring, boring conversation, blah, blah, blah. But they're in the car, they're strapped in, they can't go anywhere. So I interviewed the kids this morning in the car, and I said, look, do kids behave like jerks in your school. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, sometimes, right? And so under what conditions does this happen? And here's what we came up with. It was about a 10-minute drive to where I was taking them. We came up with 4 things. One, it's modeled, right? Why do kids do it? They do it because they see other kids doing it, I guess. That's what I got from the back seat. Number 2, they do it in groups, invariably. Is it ever one kid that just does it solo? No, not really. There might be one instigator, but there's always like a couple other kids in their orbit. Number 3, it happens because nobody stopped it. One of the questions was, well, where does it happen? Well, hallway, recess, but, well, there's just one class. Oh, why does it happen only in that class? Well, the teacher's really nice, but the teacher never stops it. I mean, the teacher stops it maybe halfway through. But anyway, it happens pretty much always in that class. Okay, helpful. Nobody stops it. And then number 4, it's contextual. So do the kids that do it sometimes do it always? No. The kids that do it sometimes don't do it always, and maybe there's a couple kids that do it always, but pretty much it depends on the circumstance as to whether kids do it, okay? And I want to just tell you that what I got from the back seat today is basically no different than what you find when you interview or you survey 1 million people. You got 20 to 30 questions, so we're working with 30 million data points here. And here's what it looks like. We're trying to understand the cultural conditions under which people behave like jerks. And we've found that when you test a couple hundred things to try and understand what are the leading indicators of misconduct, that's the sort of formal way we talk about it, or what are the conditions under which people do or don't behave like jerks, there are 7 things that you really need to know. And I'll just tell you, there's really only one thing that you need to know. It's the first thing on the list, right? The one thing I need to know to understand whether we have a problem in an organization, or more often a segment or a small group within an organization, is whether people are comfortable speaking up. If you have people saying, I wouldn't feel comfortable raising my concerns, bingo, we have a problem. We know 2 things. We know that the rate at which people behave like jerks is higher, and we know the rate, of course, at which people report it is lower. So there's your tell. But we call it the integrity index because it turns out that all 7 of these things matter, and they matter in distinct ways. I'll say the last thing on the page is really important too, and it's called organizational justice. It's the employee's belief that the organization will do something when it comes into knowledge of unethical conduct. Will you do something? Will there be justice in the organization? Everything in between I would call sort of leadership decency, right? We call it the integrity index. But everything in between, trust in colleagues, direct manager leadership, tone at the top, clarity of communications, openness of communication, I mean, that just paints the picture of what a good workplace looks like, right? But workplaces are different. It's no sense asking the question, why are people such jerks? Why are people in general such jerks? Because it's contextual. It happens in some classes. It happens not in other classes. It happens, some kids do it sometimes, but they don't do it always, and this is the same for people, right? So, let me point out one thing that's not here. What's not here? Policies. Procedures, rules, controls, and training. All the organizations we work with have those things. They are good things to have. But having more of them makes no difference on the margin. Having more of the things that you see on the screen makes a big difference on the margin. You can't have too much of what we've got here, right? But, well, some of you may be able to relate to the idea that it is possible to have too much compliance training. Maybe. Anyone? Right? Have you been there? Okay. So, it's contextual and it depends on the organization and the place in the organization. Here's how it breaks down and how we think about it. I think about it this way. Organizational culture is a mostly friendly creature. So at the threshold, I can tell you something that's encouraging, which is you take that index of 7 things, which we know to be the most critical things in organizational culture, and you say to a large group of employees, is it positive? Are those things on, it's a 7-point scale, are those things positive? And what you find is something like 63.5% have a very positive view of organizational culture. For the 100 people in this room, 63 and like a half of you, okay? 63.5 of you have a very positive view of organizational culture, and 13, this is on the bottom, 13.5 of you observed misconduct last year, right? Those are the happy places in the organization. Next, though, you can see we start to go down the hill. Organizational culture, a mostly friendly creature. 22-ish of you would say it's a pretty ethical culture. You have some reservations, right? The scores are starting to trend a little bit lower. And what you can see is a pretty direct relationship to the question, I observed misconduct in the last year. It pops up to about 34.5 people in the room. You move down the line, and pretty soon you've got ethical culture. Look, this place isn't a complete dystopia, but it's not great. 9 to 10 of you in the room would think that. Almost 60%, right? So 6-ish of you will have said, I saw misconduct last year. Organizational culture is a mostly friendly creature with a nasty tail, and every organization has it. The size of the tail depends on the overall culture in the organization, and it depends critically on the leadership culture in that specific part of the organization. So, in our room of 100, we've got 5 of you who should, if you're average, be in what I would regard as a negative ethical culture, where the integrity index is particularly low. If that's true, 4 out of those 5, or 80% of you, will have seen a violation of law or company policy in the past year. And you would have generally the attitude that it's pervasive and there's not a whole lot of point in speaking up. So I think we've established that people behave like jerks. We've talked a little bit about the fact that the frequencies are not even, which again is just, you can go right back to your junior high nightmares and know how true that is. And I think all I've shown you at this point is that you can transport that into the workplace as well, or into any large organization, and see the truth of it. But it's also true that you can analyze it, you can take it apart. It's a knowable thing. We don't have to just resign ourselves to it. Did you all report what you saw? If the 100 of you in this room saw misconduct, and if you are average people, now this is Gustavus Adolphus College, you're not average people, all 100 of you are going to run out and report it, but if you were average people, right, 40 of you would report it to someone. 25 of you would report it to your manager, a person whom you know, and in that case, and let's just keep in mind that's only 25 out of 100 of you, but 25 of you would report it to your manager, a person whom you know, and in that case, 1 out of 4, a person whom you trust. 15 of you would tell someone in the headquarters, and I'll just say that that is predominantly HR, and I don't mean to say that they are physically in the headquarters. In all likelihood, especially in those cases, it would be a person who you actually happen to know, who's probably local but attached to a headquarters function. So 15 of you do that. It's not on the page, but I'll tell you that between 0 and 1 of you will use something that was mandated in 2002 by the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which is an anonymous hotline. Millions of dollars are spent on anonymous hotlines. And here's what our research tells us. It turns out that when you put a person in a really complex, horrible personal situation that threatens them personally and threatens their career, and they're trying to decide what to do, you know, it turns out that humans don't really like to call an anonymous hotline and talk to a perfect stranger, or maybe leave a voicemail onto an empty line and say, hey, let me try and explain this complicated situation. It just doesn't happen. We talk to people we trust, or we don't talk to anybody at all. So largely this is a conversation about how do we create the conditions under which, right, we feel like we're in an organization where we can trust people. Well, I said before that we ask people, why don't you report? So why, you know about this misconduct, so why don't you report? There's 2 big reasons that 60 of you stayed quiet. Number 1, far and away, and this isn't just our research, you can read a bunch of other studies that go to this too, fear of retaliation. It's pretty straightforward. Understand that I don't mean retaliation as it might be defined under some workplace statute, right? Lawyers, I'll out myself right now as one, okay, right? Have a tendency to see this in a very formalistic way. What people fear is that their workplace environment will change in a negative way, right? That they won't be allowed to play in the reindeer games anymore. It's that simple at some level. Or they might fear that they will in fact be fired or have their compensation reduced or whatever. And then number 2, they don't think the organization will do anything about it. People pervasively just don't think the organization will do anything about it. And once you've accounted for those 2, honestly, you've accounted for the vast majority of why people don't report. So, I want to play a little game. What can I do? Right? We're motivated people. Here we are, Gustavus Adolphus College. What can I do about it? Right? What can I do? I have a list on this page of, 15-ish things that are all good things. So, to be clear, things that you should do. But there are 4 things on this list that once you account for them, and I want you in your head to try and pick out a couple of them, right? Once you account for those 4, the others kind of wash away in their effect. Another way of thinking about this, and think about the statistics, is you can't have too much of these 4, right? So let me have you take a second. So, here are the 4. Here's what you can do. These 4 things. Be honest. Take action on unethical conduct. Listen carefully to the opinions of others. And respect and entrust your employees. Those are the 4 leadership behaviors that are critical to driving the integrity index up, to reducing misconduct, and increasing people's comfort and willingness to report when they see something wrong. I want to tell you that I have, I'll admit now, that I have basically failed at the essential exercise here at TEDxGustavusAdolphusCollege, which was created innovations to respond to complex problems. Complex problem, yes. People behaving like jerks, absolutely. Creative innovation, right? This is Luke 6:31. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? This is an ancient solution to a complex problem. That's what I just gave you, okay? 30 million data points, ancient solution to a complex problem. Let me point out a couple of other things about it. You have to take action. Imagine any of these 4 things without the others. Really honest, doesn't do anything. Talk about dystopia, takes action, isn't honest. Total nightmare. Think through that one, right? Takes action on unethical conduct, isn't honest. Whoa, right? What if you had those 2 things in place and you didn't listen carefully to the opinions of others? That's a train wreck, right? And what if you had the first 3 and you just didn't respect and trust your employees? They frankly wouldn't come to you with the information. So these are the 4. Let me again note what it's not, because this is a question of, can you have too much of this, and do we want more? And I'm just telling you that we want more of these. But it's not policies, training, rules, procedures. Imagine what that would look like. You would run screaming from the room if I just got in here and told you that what we really need more of in this world is more policies, training, rules, and procedures. And thank goodness that's not the case. And I'll say the last thing about this, which is it's free. Turns out that the 4 things you need to do to stop people from behaving like jerks are free.